welcome to Stacktastic, the weekly web show for the avid comic book reader and those who aspire to become so. This week it's time once again for Opinionation, where I share my own thoughts on what I'm reading and watching. As always, I hope you'll share your own thoughts in the comments down below, plus my recommendations on what comics to pick up or download this week. Let's get started. Last week, over on Comic Book Resources, they had an interview with the guiding force behind the wildly popular animated series Young Justice, Greg Weisman, and it brought up how Weisman was behind another wildly popular animated series, Gargoyles. Man, I loved Gargoyles! When the series kicked it up a notch by adding Avalon, talk about world building. And it's those same world building skills that I'd say served Weisman so well with Young Justice. In fact, I'd say not since Gargoyles has it been so important to watch an animated series from beginning to end, as the episodes are so interconnected, which also makes Young Justice a very similar experience to reading comic books. For instance, take this latest episode, Satisfaction, as the series returns from a 4-month hiatus. It wasn't particularly momentous, and there were no huge revelations, but it was another step forward in the overall story. And I'm betting elements introduced here, such as the original Roy Harper heading toward his destiny as Arsenal, will come into play later on. On that note, I thought it was a nice touch that even though it was under different circumstances, this Roy Harper also lost his arm just as he did in the comics. Also, as many of you were excited to see, Jason Todd exists in this universe as well. Not sure how I feel about that though. On the one hand, they haven't really done much to develop Tim Drake as it is. Yet on the other hand, I kept thinking all during this episode how awesome it would be to see Roy Harper and Jason Todd team up as the angry duo. Plus, I appreciated this episode's excellent action sequences, particularly the fight between the original Roy Harper and Mercy in the parking garage of LexCorp. It was inventive and suspenseful, and they made it completely believable that a guy with just one arm could take on a robot assassin. See, Ollie, you do train him well. And as I watched that action sequence, I was reminded what a shame it is that DC Comics isn't willing to make an animated Justice League feature film. While Marvel is kicking their butt in the live-action department, DC Animation is truly a gem. And as I keep saying, that video game trailer for DC Universe Online is just as exciting as the Avengers. And as I recall, a heck of a lot of adults went to see The Incredibles and are crying out for The Incredibles 2. I bet we all settle for a Justice League animated movie. Did you pick up Young Justice number 20 as I suggested? If so, I bet you were as surprised as me to see Dick Grayson getting so much action in an all-ages book. Loved that they gave a nod to Dick's Playboy rep in the comics. While I wasn't crazy about the story jumping back and forth in time, I love that Greg Weisman has taken over the sole writing duties of this title. That's right, we just got even more Young Justice. Talon was well written and looked great, but the whole time I was reading it, I couldn't help but feel that these talents would be better put to use portraying Dick Grayson, as Calvin Rose is really just a watered-down version of that character. Guillaume March drawing Nightwing? Sorry, Eddie Barrows, your work is amazing, but why has no one thought of this? One of the few DC Zero issues that I really enjoyed was Batman and Robin. As you all know, I can't get enough Damian Wayne, but seeing him interact with his mom is a rare and special treat. It's like a comic book version of Mommy Dearest. Grant Morrison has Talia back in the pages of Batman Incorporated, but this is a character that should be more in play across the entire DC universe. Want to know another DC Zero issue that I liked? Justice League, and that's because it wasn't about the Justice League. I'm really enjoying Jeff Johns and Gary Frank's take on Billy Batson becoming Captain Marvel, and I know while some fans feel it's blasphemy, maybe it's because I was never a big Captain Marvel fan that I don't feel the same way. But I think that this is a much more realistic take on a kid suddenly being turned into a superhero, and even more interestingly, a man. Damian and Talia are Mommy Dearest, and this one is big. Last week, Gravestone XT2 asked me why I didn't recommend Hit Girl number 3, and that's because I feel this miniseries is just plain old lazy. Mark Millar hasn't done anything, at least yet, to develop or push the character. The closest thing, I guess, is her efforts to infiltrate the popular group, yet at the end of the day she just resorted to her old tactics. We get it, Hit Girl is the real kick-ass of this franchise, but what makes characters interesting are their flaws, and we have yet to see any in Mindy. If Spider-Man introduces Miles Morales into the 616, preferably an adult version, I will totally forgive this overly talky waste of paper. Using social media for two split personalities to communicate in Rose and Thorn number 1 was pretty clever, but otherwise this one-shot was kinda trashy and unoriginal. In other words, it could have used a little less Thorn and a little more Rose. Wow, hats off to Bill Willingham, who a decade later is still telling amazing stories over in Fables. This latest story arc, Cubs in Toyland, was absolutely brilliant and heart-wrenching. Kudos to Willingham for being willing to go there. We've gotten Jack, Cinderella, and Ferris. How about a spin-off following Snow and Bigby's Cubs? Now let's look to the future, or more accurately, this Wednesday. As I just mentioned, there have been several Fables spin-offs, and the latest issue of one of them, Fairest, comes out this week. Now, we can all agree that this title hardly lives up to its name in comparison to the rest of the Fables universe, but that's the beauty of a revolving door of talent. It can always get better. This week we get a new team and a new princess, Rapunzel. Also, we're promised more Frau Totenkinder, and I'll take her over a princess any day. And remember how I recommended you pick up the Doctor Who annual a few weeks ago, which had a preview of the new ongoing? Well, the ongoing has arrived, with artwork by Mark Buckingham from Fables, which we were just talking about, so you can see what a small world comics really are. Also out this week is Daredevil End of Days, one of those This Is How They Die books that Marvel is so fond of. Usually I'd say take a pass, but the talent here, Brian Michael Bendis, David Mack, Klaus Janson, and Bill Sienkiewicz, means we really should pay our respects. Finally, looking to wash the taste of Alpha out of your mouth? Then pick up Amazing Spider-Man, which starts a new story with some of Peter Parker's more tried and true characters, Hobgoblin and the Kingpin. With just 5 issues to go until he hits 700, a rebooted movie, Miles Morales, and his 50th anniversary, it's clear Spidey is still going strong. And that's this week's Stacktastic. I'm Grace Randolph for Think About the Ink. Hope to see you back on Friday for Between the Pages. Until then, happy reading.